I knew something was wrong when Amber started smiling at her phone more than she smiled at me. Not just any smile, the kind that makes a woman's eyes light up like Christmas morning. The kind she used to give me 3 years ago when we first moved in together. Now that same expression was reserved for whoever was texting her at 11:30 p.m. while I pretended to sleep beside her. "Who's that?" I asked, rolling over in our queen-sized bed. "Just Sarah," Amber said, clicking the phone off too quickly. "Girl drama from work." Sarah. Right. Sarah, who apparently worked the night shift now and needed relationship advice at midnight. I'd met Sarah exactly twice in 4 years. She was about as exciting as watching paint dry and had never once texted Amber past 9 p.m. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. The next morning, I watched Amber get ready for work with the same attention I used to give playoff games. She spent an extra 20 minutes on her makeup, chose the red dress that hugged her curves perfectly, and sprayed herself with the expensive perfume I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. "Big presentation today?" I asked from the doorway. "Something like that," she said, not meeting my eyes in the mirror. After she left, I sat at our kitchen table drinking coffee that tasted like regret and staring at the empty space where trust used to live. The apartment felt different somehow, like someone had moved all the furniture 2 inches to the left. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. Instead, I spent the day thinking. Really thinking. About the late nights Amber claimed to be working overtime. About the new clothes appearing in her closet. About how she'd stopped asking about my day and started checking her phone during our conversations. 3 days later, opportunity knocked. Amber was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a message preview. "Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful." Same hotel? The sender was listed as Jordan. I memorized the number and put the phone back exactly where she'd left it. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. Inside my chest, something cold and sharp was taking shape. When Amber came out of the bathroom wrapped in her favorite towel, I was lying in bed reading a book like nothing had happened. "I have to work late again tonight," she said, rifling through her dresser. "Johnson wants the quarterly reports finished by tomorrow." "That's fine," I said, not looking up from the page. "I'll grab dinner with Brian." She kissed my forehead before she left. Her lips felt like ice. I've always been good with details. It's what made me decent at my job in accounting and excellent at knowing when something didn't add up. Amber's story had more holes than Swiss cheese. First, I called her office. Johnson had left for vacation 3 days ago. The quarterly reports weren't due for another month. Second, I checked our credit card statements online. 3 charges at the Marriott downtown over the past 2 weeks, each one for exactly 4 hours of parking. Third, I drove to the Marriott. The parking garage was dimly lit and smelled like exhaust and broken dreams. I found her car on the 3rd level, parked next to a silver BMW with vanity plates that read JRDN1. Jordan. How creative. I sat in my Honda 2 spaces away and waited. At 8:47 p.m., they emerged from the elevator together. Amber was fixing her hair. Jordan had his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward his car like he owned her. He was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of jaw that belonged in cologne advertisements. His suit looked expensive, the kind that cost more than I made in a month. He opened her car door like a gentleman and kissed her goodbye like a lover. I followed him home. Jordan lived in a penthouse downtown, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors in the lobby. His BMW was parked in a reserved spot marked Resident Parking Only. Everything about him screamed money and success and the kind of confidence that came from never having to check your bank balance before buying groceries. I drove home and found Amber already in bed, pretending to be asleep. Her hair still smelled like his cologne. "You look like hell," Brian said, sliding into the booth across from me at Murphy's bar. "Thanks for the pep talk." He signaled the waitress for 2 beers. "Seriously, Vince? What's going on? You sounded weird on the phone. Brian had been my best friend since college. He was the kind of guy who remembered your birthday and helped you move without complaining. He also had a moral compass that pointed due north no matter what kind of storm he was in, which made him the worst possible person to tell about what I was planning. Amber's cheating on me, I said instead. His face went through several expressions before settling on sympathy. Jesus, man. Are you sure? Saw them together. Some guy named Jordan with more money than sense and a car that costs more than our apartment. What are you going to do? Good question. The old me would have confronted her directly, maybe thrown some clothes out the window, had a screaming match that ended with both of us saying things we couldn't take back. The old me believed in clean breaks and moving on. But the old me hadn't spent 4 years building a life with someone only to discover it was all a lie. I'm going to make them both wish they'd never met, I said. Brian's beer stopped halfway to his mouth. What does that mean? It means I'm done being the nice guy. He set his drink down carefully. Vince, listen to me. Whatever you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything yet, I lied. I'm just angry. But I was thinking. I was thinking about Jordan's shiny BMW and his perfect smile and how he'd probably never had to worry about anything more serious than which wine to order with dinner. I was thinking about Amber's lies and her late nights and how she'd looked me in the eye this morning and told me she loved me. Mostly, I was thinking about revenge. Jordan's car was easy to find. He parked it in the same spot every night, under a security light that had been broken for weeks. The parking garage was deserted after 10 p.m., and the security cameras had blind spots if you knew where to look. I'd been watching for 3 days, timing the security guards' rounds, memorizing the patterns. Tuesday nights were perfect. The guards spent 30 minutes on the upper levels while the ground floor sat empty. I brought a screwdriver, a hammer, and a can of black spray paint. The BMW's paint job was flawless, probably detailed every week by someone who charged more per hour than I made in a day. It seemed almost cruel to ruin something so pristine. Almost. I started with the driver's side mirror, a quick tap with the hammer that sent spiderweb cracks across the surface, then the passenger side. The screwdriver made beautiful long scratches down both doors, the kind that would cost thousands to fix properly. For the finishing touch, I spray-painted cheater across the windshield, in letters big enough to read from space. Then I went home and made myself a sandwich. Amber was already asleep when I got back, or pretending to be. She'd been doing that a lot lately, avoiding conversations that might require actual honesty. I brushed my teeth and climbed into bed beside her, feeling more relaxed than I had in weeks. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Tonight. 8 p.m. Riverside Park, South Entrance. Jordan had found my number somehow. Probably got it from Amber. I deleted the message and went to work like nothing had happened. Riverside Park after dark was the kind of place your mother warned you about. Broken streetlights created pools of shadow between patches of sickly yellow illumination. The sound of traffic from the nearby highway mixed with the rustle of wind through trees. Jordan was waiting by the old bandstand, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. Up close, he was even prettier than I'd thought. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, probably had perfect credit too. You must be Vince, he said when I approached. And you must be the guy who's been screwing my wife. He flinched slightly at my directness. Look, I know this is complicated. No, it's pretty simple. You knew she was married and you didn't care. It's not like that. What's it like then? He ran a hand through his perfect hair. Amber and I, we have a connection. Something real. I laughed, and the sound echoed off the empty bandstand. A connection. Is that what you call it when you meet someone at a hotel? You don't understand. She's not happy with you. And you're going to save her, right? Sweep her off her feet with your BMW and your penthouse and your daddy's money? His face went red. My father has nothing to do with this. Daddy's money, it is then. I took a step closer. Here's the thing, Jordan. I don't care about your connection or your feelings or whatever fairy tale you've convinced yourself this is. I want you to stay away from my wife. She's not your wife anymore, he said. Not in any way that matters. The cold thing in my chest grew sharper. We'll see about that. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. She's filing for divorce next week. Thought you should know. I kept walking without looking back, but I could feel him watching me until I disappeared into the shadows between the streetlights. Amber was sitting at the kitchen table when I got home, still dressed in her work clothes, hands folded in front of her like she was praying, or maybe preparing for a job interview. We need to talk, she said. About what? About Jordan. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. What about him? He told me what you did to his car. I don't know what you're talking about. Vince, please. This isn't helping anyone. What would help, Amber? You telling me the truth for once? Her composure cracked slightly. The truth is that I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. So, you decided to fix that by cheating on me? It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen? You were going to ask for my permission first? She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. I wanted to talk to you about it, but you're never here. You come home from work and disappear into your computer or your books or whatever. When's the last time we actually talked about anything that mattered? When's the last time you weren't lying about working late? That's not fair. Neither is finding out your wife is cheating on you from a text message. Her face went pale. You looked at my phone? You left it right there. It's not my fault your boyfriend doesn't know how to be subtle. We stared at each other across the kitchen, 4 years of marriage reducing itself to this moment. She looked smaller somehow, like the lies had been holding her up, and now that they were gone, she was collapsing in on herself. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight, she said finally. Take your time. She packed a bag while I sat on the couch pretending to watch TV. When she was ready to leave, she paused in the doorway. Vince? Yeah. I'm sorry. I really am. No, you're not, I said without looking at her. You're sorry you got caught. The door closed behind her with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. 3 days passed without contact. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits to pick up forgotten belongings. Amber had vanished from my life as completely as if she'd never existed at all, which made it the perfect time to set my trap. I knew where she worked, a marketing firm downtown that specialized in making mediocre products seem essential. I also knew her routine: coffee at 9:30 from the place across the street, lunch at her desk while scrolling through social media, leaving early on Fridays to avoid traffic. But most importantly, I knew her password. She'd been using the same combination of her birthday and our anniversary for everything since college. Some people never learn. Her company's computer system was about as secure as a screen door. It took me less than 10 minutes to access her work email from the public library downtown. Another 5 minutes to draft an email from her account to her biggest client, explaining that their latest campaign was derivative garbage designed by people who obviously hate creativity. I scheduled it to send on Monday morning at 9 a.m., right when the client would be having their weekly staff meeting. Then I went home and waited. Monday afternoon, my phone rang. She's been fired, Brian said without preamble. Jessica heard it from someone who works there. Amber sent some crazy email to a client and they dropped the account immediately. Company let her go on the spot. That's unfortunate, I said. Vince, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Bullshit, this isn't a coincidence. Sometimes bad things happen to bad people. That's just life. Brian was quiet for a long moment. This isn't you, man. This isn't who you are. Maybe you don't know who I am. I've known you for 15 years. You're not the kind of person who destroys someone's career over a relationship. People change, Brian. Not like this. Not this fast. But he was wrong. I hadn't changed at all. I was exactly the same person I'd always been. I'd just finally found something worth caring about. And if caring about it meant making sure the people who hurt me understood consequences, well, that was just the price of admission. Amber called that evening, her voice shaking with rage and desperation. "I know you did this," she said without preamble. "Did what?" "You got me fired. I don't know how, but I know it was you. Maybe you should be more careful about what you write in emails." "I never wrote that email, Vince. You know I never wrote it." "Prove it." Silence stretched between us like a taut wire waiting to snap. "Why?" she said finally. "Why would you do this to me?" "You destroyed 4 years of my life. I figured I'd return the favor. This is insane. You can't just what? Fight back? Make you face consequences for once in your perfect little life." "My life isn't perfect." "No, but it was pretty good until you decided you wanted someone else's." I could hear her crying on the other end of the line, small hitching sounds that might have moved me a week ago. Now they just sounded like justice. "I need this job, Vince. I have bills, rent, my car payment." Sounds like a personal problem. "Please. I'm begging you. Whatever you think I deserve, this is enough. Call them and tell them it was a mistake." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because I didn't do anything to undo." She hung up without saying goodbye. 10 minutes later, Jordan called. "You're going to fix this," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Fix what?" "You know exactly what. Amber told me what you did. Amber seems confused about a lot of things lately." "This isn't a game, you psycho. She's talking about filing a police report." "For what?" "Getting fired for sending an inappropriate email? For harassment, for stalking, for whatever else we can think of." I laughed, and the sound seemed to make him even angrier. "You think this is funny? I think you're a spoiled rich kid who's never had to face consequences for anything, and now you're panicking because someone finally called your bluff. You have no idea who you're messing with." "Actually, I do. You're the guy who steals other men's wives and then acts surprised when they don't thank you for it." I poured myself a drink and settled in to wait for their next move. It came 2 days later. I was eating breakfast when someone started pounding on my door like they were trying to break it down. Through the peephole, I could see Amber standing in the hallway, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red from crying or not sleeping, or both. "Open the door, Vince." I took my time finishing my coffee before I let her in. She pushed past me into the apartment, spinning around to face me with the kind of wild energy that comes from being pushed too far too fast. "You want to destroy me? Fine. Let's get it over with." "I don't want to destroy you, Amber. I want you to understand what it feels like." What feels like? Having your whole world fall apart while the person who caused it acts like nothing happened. She laughed, high and sharp. "My whole world?" "I lost a job, Vince. I didn't lose everything." "Neither did I. I still have this apartment. I still have my job. I still have my dignity." "Your dignity?" Her voice climbed an octave. "You vandalized someone's car and hacked into my email account and you want to talk about dignity? I want to talk about consequences. This isn't consequences, this is revenge. There's a difference." "Is there?" She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. "What happened to you?" she said quietly. "You happened to me. You and your perfect boyfriend with his perfect life and his perfect car. Jordan isn't perfect. No, but he's rich and handsome and everything I'm not. That's not why It's exactly why. You got bored with normal and decided to upgrade. Amber sank onto the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. It wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me not being happy. So you decided to be happy with someone else without bothering to mention it to me first. I was going to tell you. When? After the wedding? She looked up sharply. What wedding? Oh, did I forget to mention? I know all about Jordan's little proposal. The ring, the plan to elope to Vegas next month. Very romantic. Her face went white. How could you possibly? I've been paying attention. Something you might want to try sometime. The truth was, I'd been following Jordan for weeks, learning his patterns, his habits, his weaknesses. The ring I'd seen him browsing at the jewelry store downtown. The Vegas tickets I'd glimpsed on his desk when he left his office window open. People were so careless when they thought nobody was watching. He was going to tell you, Amber said weakly. After you told me, right? This whole thing was going to be one big happy conversation where everyone got what they wanted except me. We never meant to hurt you. But you did it anyway. She started crying then, real tears that soaked through her sleeves and made her mascara run in dark streaks down her cheeks. A month ago, it would have broken my heart. Now it just looked like rain. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to feel what it's like to have someone you trust tear your life apart. I want you to remember this feeling every time you think about lying to someone who loves you. And then what? Then you can have your perfect life with your perfect boyfriend and your perfect future. Just somewhere else. The call came at midnight exactly 1 week later. It's over. Jordan's voice was different now, smaller somehow, defeated. What's over? Whatever game you've been playing. We get it. You win. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. What are you talking about? The photos. The emails to my business partners. The anonymous tips to the IRS about my tax returns. I hadn't done any of those things, but I didn't tell him that. Sounds like someone's got a guilty conscience. You want to know the truth about your precious wife? She was going to leave you anyway, with or without me. She told me herself. She was just waiting for the right moment. Is that supposed to hurt my feelings? She never loved you. Not really. You were just convenient. The words hit their mark, but not in the way he'd intended. They didn't hurt. They liberated. Because if Amber had never really loved me, then I'd never really lost anything worth keeping. Thanks for clearing that up, I said. We're leaving town tomorrow. Both of us. You'll never see us again. Have a nice trip. This isn't over. Yes, it is. And I lay back down in bed, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm, sirens and car horns and the distant sound of life continuing without me. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. I woke up the next morning to find an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a check for half the money in our joint savings account and a note written in Amber's careful handwriting. I'm sorry it ended this way. You deserved better. We both did. No return address, no phone number. Just a goodbye disguised as an apology. I deposited the check and closed our joint accounts, changed the locks on the apartment, threw away the pictures and the souvenirs and all the other debris that accumulates when two people try to build a life together and fail. Brian called that afternoon. So I heard through the grapevine that Amber and her boyfriend left town, he said carefully. Good for them. You want to talk about it? Not really. You want to get drunk and pretend it never happened? Now you're talking. We met at Murphy's bar like we had 1,000 times before. The same booth, the same beer, the same comfortable silence that came from 15 years of friendship. But something was different now. I was different. So what happens now? Brian asked after his third drink. Now I figure out what comes next. Any ideas? I thought about it. For 4 years, my life had revolved around someone else's needs, someone else's schedule, someone else's idea of what our future should look like. Now, for the first time since college, I was completely free to choose my own direction. I'm thinking about taking that promotion they offered me last year. The one that requires travel. The one Amber said you couldn't take because she didn't want to be alone so much? That's the one. Brian smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Sounds like a plan. We drank until closing time, talking about everything except revenge and betrayal and the price of justice. When the bartender called last call, I felt lighter than I had in months. Walking home through the empty streets, I realized that somewhere in the process of destroying the people who'd hurt me, I'd accidentally saved myself. 6 months later, I was standing in an airport in Denver, waiting for a connecting flight to Seattle. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your name in the business section. Congratulations on the promotion. You always deserved better. A. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Through the window, I could see planes taking off and landing, carrying people toward new lives and away from old mistakes. My flight was boarding in 20 minutes, taking me to a new city and a new assignment, and a future that belonged entirely to me. I thought about texting back. Thought about saying thank you, or I hope you're happy, or any of the things people say when they want to prove they've moved on. Instead, I turned off my phone and walked toward the gate. Some conversations are over before they begin. Some chapters end with a period, not an ellipsis. Some revenge is best served by simply refusing to care anymore. The plane lifted off into a clear blue sky, carrying me away from everything I'd lost and toward everything I'd found. Below us, the city grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Just another place I used to live. I closed my eyes and smiled. The Seattle assignment lasted 8 months. Clean air, mountains in the distance, and a job that actually challenged me for the first time in years. I was auditing a tech startup that had grown too fast for its own good, finding discrepancies that could save them millions or sink them completely. It was exactly the kind of work I'd always wanted to do. My apartment was a studio in Capitol Hill with hardwood floors and windows that faced west toward the Sound. No memories lived in those walls, no ghosts hiding in the corners. Just space and possibility and the faint smell of coffee from the shop downstairs. I'd been there 3 weeks when Brian called. "You need to come home," he said without preamble. "Why?" "What happened?" "It's about Amber." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What about her?" "She's back. And she's been asking about you." I set down my coffee and walked to the window. Below, people moved through their lives with purpose and direction, heading toward jobs and relationships and futures they'd chosen for themselves. "I don't care," I said. "Vince—" "I mean it, Brian. Whatever she wants, whatever she's doing, it has nothing to do with me anymore. She came by Murphy's last night, asked if I'd heard from you. What did you tell her? That you were doing great and had moved on? Good. She didn't look good, man. Thin, tired, like she hadn't been sleeping. Still don't care. But that was a lie, and we both knew it. Some wounds heal clean, leaving nothing but faint scars you forget about until someone mentions them. Others never quite close, staying tender to the touch years after the damage was done. "Just thought you should know," Brian said. "Thanks, but I'm not coming back early." I wasn't asking you to. After he hung up, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the sun set over Puget Sound. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple, before finally giving way to darkness. In the distance, lights began to twinkle on the islands, each one representing someone's home, someone's life, someone's attempt to find peace in an uncertain world. I had work to do, a life to build. a future to create that had nothing to do with the past I'd left behind. But that night, I dreamed about her anyway. The dreams came every night for a week. Not nightmares exactly, but memories twisted into something uncomfortable and strange. Amber at our kitchen table, but her face kept changing into someone else's. Jordan's BMW, but it was parked in my driveway. The hotel where they'd met, but I was the one checking in. By Friday, I was exhausted enough to admit defeat. I called Brian during my lunch break. What exactly did she say when she came to Murphy's? You sure you want to know? No, tell me anyway. He sighed. She said she made a mistake. Said she'd been trying to track you down for months. Track me down? My office knows where I am. You know where I am. She said she called your office. They told her you were on assignment but wouldn't give specifics. Good. That's what they're supposed to do. Vince, she was crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used to pull when she wanted something. People cry when they face consequences. Doesn't mean they've learned anything. Maybe. But she also said Jordan left her. That stopped me cold. When? About 2 months after they moved to Phoenix. Apparently he met someone else. Someone younger with more money. She's broke, Vince. Lost her apartment, living with her sister again. Looking for work, but nobody wants to hire her after that email thing. The email thing. The trap I'd set that had started her downward spiral. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. What does she want from me? She didn't say exactly, but I got the impression she wants to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry. Too late for that. Is it? I stared out the window of my office at the Seattle skyline, all glass and steel and ambition reaching toward the sky. A year ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Too late. Too much damage, too many lies to ever trust again. Now I wasn't so sure. I'm not coming back early, I said finally. Okay. But if she asks again, you can give her my email. You sure? No, but do it anyway. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, buried between spam about erectile dysfunction and a newsletter I'd forgotten to unsubscribe from. The subject line was simple. Please read this. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Vince, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I need to say some things, and I need you to hear them. You were right. About everything. About Jordan, about me. About the choices I made and the lies I told. I was selfish and cruel, and I hurt the one person who actually loved me for who I was, instead of who I pretended to be. Jordan left me for a 22-year-old art student whose father owns a chain of restaurants. He said I was getting too old for him and too needy. He said he never loved me, just like the idea of taking something away from someone else. I know that doesn't excuse what I did to you. Nothing excuses that. But I wanted you to know that you were right about him too. I'm not writing this because I want you back. I know that's impossible. I'm writing because I owe you the truth, and because I hope someday you can forgive me enough to remember the good parts of what we had instead of just the way it ended. You were the best man I ever knew, and I threw it away for nothing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Amber P.S. I heard about your promotion. You always deserve to have people recognize how smart you are. I read it 3 times, then deleted it. Then I retrieved it from the trash and read it again. She was right. It didn't excuse anything. But something about the tone felt different, less desperate, more resigned, like someone who'd finally stopped making excuses and started accepting responsibility. I closed my laptop and went for a walk. Pike Place Market was crowded with tourists and locals, the air thick with the smell of fresh fish and brewing coffee. I bought a cup from my favorite vendor and found a spot to sit where I could watch the chaos unfold around me. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in Seattle reading an apology email from my ex-wife, I would have laughed. 6 months ago, I would have been angry. Now, I just felt hollow, like I'd been carved out and left empty. The revenge had worked. Amber's life had fallen apart exactly as I'd planned. Jordan had revealed his true nature and moved on to his next victim. Justice had been served, consequences had been faced, and I'd emerged victorious. So why didn't it feel like winning? My phone buzzed with a text from Brian. Heard from you-know-who lately. Instead of answering, I called him. She emailed me, I said when he picked up. And I don't know what to think about it. What did she say? I gave him the highlights, leaving out the parts that made her sound too sympathetic. Brian listened without interrupting, which was one of the things that made him a good friend. Sounds like she meant it, he said when I finished. Sounds like she's desperate. Maybe both. I watched a vendor arrange salmon on ice, each fish positioned perfectly to catch the light and draw customers. Everything in the market was about presentation, about making something look better than it really was. Brian, do you think I'm a bad person? What kind of question is that? The kind a bad person asks. He was quiet for a moment. I think you're someone who got hurt and decided to hurt back. That doesn't make you bad, but it doesn't make you good either. Thanks for the clarity. You want clarity? Here it is. The revenge stuff made you feel better for a while, but it didn't fix anything. You're still angry, she's still sorry, and both of you are still broken. So what's the solution? I don't know. But maybe it starts with deciding whether you want to stay broken or try to heal. I spent the weekend thinking about Brian's words, about healing and forgiveness, and whether some things were too damaged to ever be repaired. About the difference between justice and revenge, and whether I'd gotten either one. Sunday night, I sat down at my laptop and started typing. Amber, I got your email. I'm not ready to forgive you, and I'm not sure I ever will be. But I'm tired of being angry, and I'm tired of carrying this around like a weight I can't put down. What you did was wrong. The lying, the cheating, the way you made me feel like I wasn't enough. All of it was wrong. But what I did after wasn't right either. I wanted you to hurt the way I was hurting, and I got what I wanted. It didn't make anything better. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if we'll ever be able to be in the same room without it being weird, but I'm willing to try if you are. Not because I want to get back together. That ship sailed a long time ago. But because we spent 4 years building something together, and maybe we owe it to those people we used to be to end this better than we started it. I'll be back in town next month. If you want to meet for coffee and try to have an actual conversation, let me know. Vince. I read it twice, then hit send before I could change my mind. The flight back home felt different than all the others. Not better or worse, just different. Like I was returning to a place I'd never really left, but couldn't quite call home anymore. Brian picked me up at the airport, his car still held together with duct tape and hope. How's Seattle? He asked as we merged into traffic. Expensive. Clean. Full of people who think they're changing the world by writing code. Sounds terrible. It's not bad. Just different. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, past familiar landmarks and intersections that held 4 years' worth of memories. The Mexican restaurant where Amber and I had our first official date. The bookstore where we'd spent Saturday afternoons browsing separate sections, but always finding each other at the register. The apartment complex where we'd lived before moving in together. You nervous? Brian asked. About what? About seeing her. I'd been trying not to think about it, but now that he'd brought it up, I realized I was. Not nervous exactly, but something close to it. Anticipation mixed with dread and a healthy dose of uncertainty. A little. You don't have to do this, you know. Just because you said you would doesn't mean you're locked in. I know. But you're going to anyway. Yeah, I think I am. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Even if it goes badly, especially if it goes badly. At least then you'll know you tried. We met at a place neither of us had been to before, a neutral ground with no history attached. Amber was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. She looked different, thinner, like Brian had said, but also somehow more solid. Less polished, but more real. Her hair was shorter, barely touching her shoulders, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like someone who'd stopped trying to impress people and started focusing on just getting through the day. "Hi," she said when I sat down. "Hi." We stared at each other for a moment, two people who'd shared a bed for 4 years trying to figure out how to be strangers. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. "Thank you for writing. The real email, I mean. Not the first few." She winced slightly. "How many did I send before you read one?" "7, but who's counting?" "You, apparently." It was almost a joke, which surprised both of us. For a second, it felt like we might be able to do this without it turning into a disaster. "You look good," she said. "Different. More, I don't know. Confident, maybe? Seattle agrees with me." "I'm glad." The conversation felt stilted, like we were reading from a script neither of us had seen before, but underneath the awkwardness, there was something else. A sense that we were both trying, really trying, to do this right. "I want to apologize," she said suddenly. "Really apologize, not just say I'm sorry." "Okay." "I was selfish. I was bored and restless, and instead of talking to you about it, I decided the problem was you. I convinced myself that you weren't enough, that I deserved something more exciting, something that would make me feel special." She paused to take a sip of coffee, her hands shaking slightly. "But the truth is, I was the problem. I was the one who stopped trying, who stopped communicating, who stopped appreciating what we had. And when Jordan showed up and made me feel desired again, I used that as an excuse to blow up our entire life." "Why?" I asked. "Why not just talk to me first?" "Because I was a coward. Because it was easier to make you the villain than to admit I was the one who wasn't happy." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I understood. It's always easier to blame someone else for your problems than to take responsibility for fixing them. "What I did to you was unforgivable," she continued. "The lying, the cheating, the way I made you question yourself, all of it was cruel and selfish and wrong. And I'm not asking you to forgive me because I don't deserve it." "Then what are you asking for?" "I'm asking you to believe that I know how badly I screwed up. I'm asking you to believe that I wish I could take it all back and do it differently. And I'm asking you to believe that you were never the problem." She was crying now, quietly, tears running down her cheeks without any attempt to wipe them away. "You were a good husband, Vince. You were kind and funny and patient and everything I should have wanted. The fact that I didn't want it says everything about me and nothing about you." I sat there for a moment processing her words. A year ago, hearing her say those things would have meant everything to me. Now they just felt like a necessary conversation we should have had a long time ago. "What happened with Jordan?" I asked. She laughed bitterly. "Exactly what you predicted. He got bored and moved on to someone younger and richer. Turns out I wasn't special after all, just convenient." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. You tried to warn me and I wouldn't listen." She was right. I wasn't sorry Jordan had left her, but I was sorry she'd had to learn that lesson the hard way. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "No. I hated you for a while, but it was exhausting. Now I just feel done. Done. Done being angry. Done caring about what you did or why you did it. Done letting it define how I think about myself." She nodded like she understood. "That's probably healthier than what I've been doing." "What have you been doing?" "Hating myself. Replaying every conversation we ever had and wondering how I could have been so stupid. Wishing I could go back and choose differently. You can't, I know. But you can choose differently going forward. She looked up at me with something that might have been hope. Do you really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? We talked for another hour, covering ground we'd never covered when we were married, about her childhood and why she always felt like she needed to be performing. About my tendency to withdraw when things got difficult instead of fighting for what I wanted. About the ways we'd failed each other and the ways we'd failed ourselves. When it was time to leave, we stood awkwardly by the door, two people who'd once shared everything trying to figure out how to say goodbye. Will I see you again? She asked. Probably not. I figured. But I had to ask. Amber? Yeah? For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope you do too. She hugged me then, quick and fierce, like she was trying to memorize the feeling. Then she was gone, walking away down the sidewalk without looking back. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through neighborhoods that used to be ours, but now belonged to other people. The Mexican restaurant had new owners and a different name. The bookstore had closed down and been replaced by a chain coffee shop. The apartment complex looked smaller somehow, like it had shrunk in my absence. Change was everywhere, subtle but constant, the way it always was if you stayed away long enough to notice it. My own apartment felt different too, still mine, but lighter somehow. Like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. I called Brian. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected, worse than hoped. That's cryptic. We talked. Really talked. She apologized, I accepted it, and we both agreed that we're different people than we were when this started. And nothing. That's it. That's the end of the story. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free. Free is good. Free is excellent. I hung up and looked around my apartment, really looked at it for the first time in months. It was clean and organized and completely devoid of personality. The walls were white, the furniture was functional, and nothing in it reflected who I was or what I cared about. It looked like a place someone was planning to leave, which I realized was exactly what it was. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to my supervisor in Seattle. The assignment was finished, but there were other projects, other cities, other opportunities to build something new instead of trying to repair something broken. 3 days later, I was on a plane heading west again, watching my old life disappear beneath the clouds. This time, I didn't look back. Some stories end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. Some end with justice or forgiveness or the triumph of good over evil. This one ended with understanding. Not forgiveness exactly, and not reconciliation, but something simpler and more honest. The acknowledgement that people make mistakes, pay consequences, and hopefully learn something in the process. Amber would figure out her own path forward. I would figure out mine. And maybe, if we were both lucky, we'd find something better than what we'd lost. The plane climbed higher, carrying me toward whatever came next. Below, the city grew smaller and smaller until it was just another place I used to live, another chapter in a story that was still being written. I closed my eyes and smiled. Some endings are really beginnings in disguise.